Generally, when it comes to Game of the Year candidates, it's unusual for me to be sitting here talking about a game that so many people do agree is Game of the Year. My favourite video game possibly of all time is Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, which is a fantastic adaptation of a TTRPG setting. That game came out in 2004, and basically ever since I've been like chasing that high of finding the next perfect TTRPG, video game RPG I can really get into in terms of the world and the setting and the characters in just the same way. It just had to hit like perfectly right. No shade on Cyberpunk. I did like Cyberpunk, but it just didn't quite hit the spot in the same way. And Baldur's Gate 3 was totally not on my radar. I'm not a huge D&D person generally. I like it. I'm aware of it. So it kind of came out and I was covering it for guides. So I was like, I'll play a little bit. And it just did kind of get its hooks into me in the same way that Vampire the Masquerade did all those years ago. And a huge part of that is down to the writing and the cast. The fact that there is no Best Ensemble Cast Award at the Game Awards or at a lot of these award shows, that deficiency has been shown up by Baldur's Gate 3, because honestly, it's such a shame that you can't nominate the whole cast. There's not a weak link, and they just sell these characters so perfectly, these companions who you spend, dozens, hundreds of hours with over the course of the story, do really make the game, in my opinion. And I think that's, for me, the thing that will always go from good game to great game is if the characters can get you so invested in their world and in their stories and get you to want to keep coming back to the game like day after day. There's so many games to play this year, especially. There are so many things competing for your attention. It's been so hard to find something that made you want to keep checking back in. And Baldur's Gate 3, because of all the intertwined stories and the constant sense of like movement through the story because of the whole journey aspect of it, just really got me. I'm not always hooked by high fantasy settings. I can find them quite dense, quite hard to relate to. But the fact that they can bring in a vampire spawn elf who you still are like so drawn to as a character, and there's something like incredibly human about all of those characters, despite the fact that, it's a giant red lady with horns or whatever, is a hugely useful way of getting into that story. And suddenly you care more about like tiefling politics and all of these things that just often don't grip you if there isn't a very humanizing aspect. The mocap is really like spot on as well. It's so spectacular. I haven't seen a game that looks that somehow realistic, even though, as we've said, it can't be realistic because it's, tieflings and vampires and things, but they look like real people, they move like real people. I think, knowing a little bit about the behind the scenes, they actually did a lot of the mocap direction was done by the actors or by people who were in sort of acting pool for the game. And you can tell that it's been really informed by people who love those characters, like not just the voice lines, not just the way that the stories go, but actually the little sort of physical ticks almost. I like the main plot. I like the whole we've got this tadpole problem that we've got to deal with. I think that's a good central kind of problem for a hero to be dealing with, to keep you going through hundreds of hours of like side quests and weird little exploration issues and stuff. But it has to be, like I say, the human aspect that I absolutely love. I don't believe that there are perfect games, but the fact that it was fully expected by everyone, including me, to be this sort of niche release for people who were very into the first two games, which came out 20 years ago, and ended up absolutely storming it, with almost everyone who's played it just adoring it. I can see me looking back in another 20 years and thinking, yeah, Baldur's Gate 3 was like the game of the year 2023.